Sure. Here's Section 1. The distress signal written with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 1. The distress signal. The stars of the outer spiral arm flickered like dying embers in a cosmic hearth. Far beyond the reach of common trade routes and political borders, a signal pulsed faintly through the void, weak, desperate, and nearly lost in the background radiation of the universe. It was old technology, transmitting on frequencies no modern race had used in centuries. But that message, fragmented, panicked, raw, cut through the silence like a scream in a graveyard. Please, anyone help us. Genocide, they're burning the sky, our children. Then static. A voice that had traveled light years vanished again into darkness. On the bridge of the Terran Union warship Vigilant Dawn, orbiting a forward station near the Perseus Arm, Lieutenant Kala Rios stared at the waveform pulsing across her monitor. It had taken the ship's AI almost 2 hours to reconstruct even that snippet of audio. She leaned back in her chair. Captain, you might want to hear this. Within the hour, the signal was routed through Terran High Command. Across the galaxy, humanity had grown into something both feared and misunderstood, a species born on a death world, a planet so hostile that every life form had to evolve in brutal competition just to survive. Earth was a crucible, fire and teeth and venom, and its children carried that legacy into the stars. Their expansion was cautious, often violent, always pragmatic. While other civilizations relied on diplomacy, technology, or biology, humans had a terrifying trifecta: adaptability, ruthlessness, and creativity. In galactic forums, they were called many things: apex predators, nightmares, even myths. But one name stuck: Deathworlders.
Now, someone was calling them.
In the chambers of the Terran Defense Council, holograms of the alien transmission danced above the conference table. Analysts whispered. Historians pulled records. One name surfaced from the ancient xenological archives: Volari ***. A lost species. Thought extinct or isolated for over 400 standard years. Rumored to be an empathic, peace-loving race with architecture made from grown crystal and no history of warfare. Admiral Thorne, a cold-eyed veteran with a steel spine, stood before the transmission. They're not asking just anyone. They're broadcasting blind, hoping someone hears. Why us? A younger officer asked. Thorne's gaze swept the room. Because no one else came, and they've run out of time. Silence. Then a new voice, calm, precise, and chilling. Dispatch the Black Fangs. The Black Fangs, an elite Terran strike team known for their surgical precision and brutality in asymmetric warfare, had ended uprisings, extinguished pirate fleets, and eliminated warlords on 13 worlds. Their commander, Captain Elias Miles, was a legend, spoken of in the same breath as extinction-level threats. The order came with no debate. The humans would go, but not as diplomats. They were sending war. The Vengeance of Earth, a matte-black Corvette with predator lines and cloaked plating, dropped from FTL in the outer atmosphere of a blue-green world. Scans revealed structures made from semi-organic crystal, bioluminescent forests, floating spires that defied gravity through unknown mechanisms. It looked like something from a fairy tale, but the fires were real. Cthar warships, brutal, jagged things swarmed the skies. Massive dropships descended like insects, disgorging soldiers into Volari settlements. Energy readings suggested orbital bombardment and chemical weapons. In the distance, a city burned. The screams were faint, but not silenced. Captain Miles stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, arms crossed, visor down. Scan for civilian clusters. Closest one. 70 clicks west, in the middle of an energy forest. Defenses minimal. Mostly non-combatants. Miles nodded. Prep for descent. Full tactical gear. Minimal footprint. Sergeant Halverson chuckled darkly. Can't believe we're rescuing crystal elves from lizard ogres. Doesn't matter what they are, Miles said. Someone asked for help. That's enough. As the Vengeance cut silently through the upper atmosphere, Miles stared out the viewport at the glowing forest below. He could already imagine the smell: burnt ozone, charred flora, the copper sting of blood. He didn't like to romanticize war, but he knew it intimately. This would be one more campaign. One more line in a long, bloody ledger. But something about the transmission stayed with him. Not the words. The tone. It hadn't been a military command or a diplomatic request. It had been a parent's voice. Raw with fear. Choked with grief. Utterly hopeless. And beneath that, trust. They had begged for help. And even knowing what humanity was, they still hoped someone would come. They hadn't expected Deathworlders to answer. But Deathworlders had. And that was going to change everything. Would you like to continue with Section 2? First Contact on Velar Prime? Absolutely. Here's Section 2. First Contact on Velar Prime, with a minimum of 700 words, continuing the story. ## Section 2. First Contact on Velar Prime. The vengeance of Earth landed like a shadow among the glowing trees of Velar Prime. Its hull, a dull matte black, seemed to drink in the ambient light. Around the clearing, tall crystalline flora shimmered in pink and violet hues, humming with the low-frequency song of the living forest. Birds, feathered things with translucent wings, took flight, disturbed by the machine that had split their sky. The rear hatch hissed open. 12 humans stepped onto alien soil, weapons raised, armor gleaming under the twin moons. Each footfall was heavy, deliberate, and unnatural in the otherwise tranquil world. These were not diplomats. These were soldiers, Deathworlders in every sense of the word. Captain Elias Miles led the formation, scanning their surroundings through his HUD. The biometric overlay confirmed what drones had already reported: high emotional activity ahead, but no threats. "They're here," said Sergeant Halverson quietly, his rifle trained forward. "I can feel it." Miles nodded. No sudden movements.
Safety on.
Let's try not to traumatize the pacifists. Through the trees, the Volari emerged like ghosts made of light and sorrow. Tall, slender, and glowing faintly in the dim light, their bodies shimmered with soft bioluminescence. Their faces were humanoid, but ethereal, eyes too large, skin too smooth, every motion fluid like water. They wore long, woven garments that changed color with emotion, and they moved not as individuals, but as one cohesive group. The humans lowered their weapons, but only slightly. At the center of the Volari delegation stood a woman, if she could be called that. Taller than the others, her luminous robes pulsed with a pale blue that radiated sadness and awe. Her eyes, entirely silver, locked with Miles. "You came," she said. Her voice was layered, resonant, almost like music. "Deathworlders," you answered. Miles removed his helmet slowly, revealing a stern, weathered face. "We got your message." She stepped forward. "I am Lyra of the Volari High Circle. I speak for the voices that remain." Her gaze drifted over the human squad. "Your presence is heavier than I imagined." Miles gave a nod. "You asked for help. We're here to deliver." Lyra tilted her head. "We did not know who had come. Only that someone might." Her voice faltered. "But we didn't expect warbringers." Halverson muttered under his breath. "Should have sent flowers and hugs instead, maybe." Miles shot him a glance, then turned back to Lyra. "You said genocide. Extermination. Children. So we brought what we had." She gestured to the clearing behind her, where several Volari lay on floating stretchers, wounded, burned, some barely conscious. Among them, children clung to their guardians, trembling. "The Kthar descended 3 cycles ago," she said, her tone cracking. "They came without warning. We tried to speak with them, to understand. They responded with fire." Another Volari male stepped forward, lifting a small child whose skin glowed only faintly. "Our young cannot feel. Their empathy is collapsing under trauma. And we do not know how to fight. We've never needed to." Miles surveyed the destruction visible just beyond the sanctuary's edge: smoldering trees, bloodstains on crystal stones, broken song spires. "You've got no planetary defense grid?" he asked. No weapons, Lyra replied. We dismantled them millennia ago, when our people chose peace. Halverson exhaled sharply. That went well. The captain raised a hand, silencing him again. Lyra stepped closer, her expression unreadable. We heard tales of your kind. Of earth. Of fire and storms. They say your world kills the weak and forges the strong. Miles didn't deny it. Earth made us what we are. We didn't come here to prove anything. Just tell us what you need. She looked at him, deeply, as if trying to sense his soul, and spoke with sudden clarity. I need you to be what they fear you are. A hush fell over the clearing. One of the Volari children let out a soft wail, too weak to be a cry. Miles turned and saw a small boy, skin pale, glow dim, a wound across his side barely clotted. A medic crouched beside him, trying to administer a coagulant patch. Without thinking, Miles walked over and knelt by the child. The boy's eyes, large, luminous, and hollow, met his. Then, from the child's forehead, a pulse of emotion.
Pain, fear,
Helplessness. And underneath it all, hope. It hit Miles like a blow to the chest. He rose slowly, turned to his squad, and spoke without raising his voice. We're staying. We help them evacuate the wounded, set up perimeter defense, then we take the fight to the Kthar. Lyra stared. You would do this for us? Miles didn't look at her. His gaze was on the smoke rising in the distance. We didn't come because we expected gratitude. We came because someone needed help. Another Marine spoke up. Permission to start deploying automated sentries, Captain? Do it, Miles said. As the humans fanned out, beginning to transform the Volari sanctuary into a defensible position, Lyra walked beside him. You are unlike anything we've ever known. Miles finally looked at her. You called us monsters once. You were right. But monsters don't run from fire. They walk into it. He didn't wait for her response. The humans were here, and the Deathworlders had answered. Would you like to proceed to Section 3, Humanity Unleashed next? Certainly. Here's Section 3, Humanity Unleashed, with a minimum of 700 words. ## Section 3, Humanity Unleashed. The sun had barely risen over the horizon of Velar Prime when the first Kthar warship appeared in the sky. Its silhouette was jagged and monstrous, an insect-like dreadnought with twisted metal limbs that rippled through the atmosphere like a living thing. It descended slowly, giving the humans on the ground just enough time to prepare. Captain Miles stood in the midst of the hastily erected command center, now surrounded by a patchwork of Volari civilians and human soldiers, their presence forming a fragile but growing line of defense. The metallic scent of weapons filled the air, mingling with the overwhelming tang of alien flora. It felt like war had finally arrived in full force. The peaceful Volari were witnessing a side of humanity they had hoped never to see, humanity unrestrained. Miles was calm, his eyes scanning the horizon as his fingers adjusted the settings on his communication gear. His voice, when he spoke, was the low rumble of a man accustomed to giving orders in the heat of battle. Black Fangs report in, he said. A chorus of acknowledgments echoed in his earpiece. Marine Squads 1 and 3, set up perimeters. Drone deployments in 5. I want all active firing positions covered. Any Kthar making a move, no hesitation. You drop them first. A gruff voice piped through the comms.
Aye, sir.
We're on it. They won't know what hit him. The Kthar warship loomed closer, the dreadnought's size now revealing its true monstrosity. Beneath it, smaller vessels swarmed like locusts, attack ships filled with Kthar shock troops ready to pour into the Volari capital. Miles could see the glow of energy weapons building up in the enemy craft's gun ports. They're coming in hot, said Sergeant Halverson, standing at the edge of a cliff and scanning the field below with a thermal visor. Can't stop this one with anything short of a nuke. Don't need to stop it, Miles replied coolly. We just need to make sure they regret landing. Lyra stood nearby, her silver eyes wide with disbelief as she watched the humans prepare for battle. The air felt thick with tension. She could almost taste the anticipation in it. You plan to fight them here? she asked, her voice trembling slightly. We never wanted war. Miles turned to her, his face unreadable behind the visor of his helmet. I didn't ask you to. But this war isn't yours to end peacefully. Not anymore. A sense of grim understanding settled between them. The Volari had trusted peace to an extent that had left them vulnerable to violence. Humanity, on the other hand, had learned that peace could be an illusion. A well-placed illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. And in the end, it was the strongest who survived. The first wave of Cthar dropships came into range. The air buzzed with the low hum of their engines, and the ground beneath them shook with the force of their landing. Soldiers clad in their brutal, segmented armor, their bodies imposing and insectoid, began to spill out in droves, charging toward the human positions with unrelenting ferocity. Miles didn't wait for them to get any closer. Fire. The order went out, and in an instant the human squad was unleashed. High-powered pulse rifles roared, lighting up the battlefield in a wave of fire. Cthar troops exploded into mist, their armor shredded under the human firepower. The battlefield became a chaotic symphony of explosions, gunfire, and the unmistakable smell of burnt ozone. Halverson moved with lethal grace, cutting down Cthar soldiers with his combat blade before switching to his rifle to take down another at range. The Black Fangs were relentless, each Marine a perfect combination of training and fury, their movements calculated and precise. In their wake, Cthar bodies littered the field, and their war cries began to fade into silence. Lyra watched in horrified awe as the humans fought. She had never seen anything like it, no honor, no hesitation, just raw, surgical violence. The humans didn't fight with the elegance of her people, with grace or diplomacy. They fought like a storm, ruthless and without mercy. Yet, despite herself, she felt a flicker of something else in the pit of her stomach. Admiration. The Cthar were a terrible force, but the humans didn't fear them. They embraced the fight, even in its darkest forms. Help us, Lyra whispered, her voice barely audible above the din of battle. Miles didn't respond immediately. Instead, he moved with purpose, leading his soldiers into the heart of the fight. He was a force of nature on his own, clearing paths through Cthar lines with the precision of a predator on the hunt. The humans didn't see war as a noble act. They saw it as something cold and necessary, a tool for survival. As the battle raged on, the Volari began to realize something else, something that made them both fear and respect the humans in equal measure. Despite the carnage, despite the brutality, the humans were not mindless killers. They had a purpose. Every move they made was coordinated with a tactical genius that transcended mere strength. They fought like chess masters, always thinking several steps ahead, reading their opponents, adapting in real time. Suddenly, the air shimmered as a Cthar heavy assault ship dropped in from the atmosphere. It was a massive thing, easily twice the size of a human transport, bristling with heavy weapons and shields that crackled as they absorbed enemy fire. A loud bang reverberated through the air as it deployed its own ground forces, heavily armored Cthar warriors in full battle gear, led by a hulking creature that must have been their commander. Miles smiled grimly. He had been waiting for this. Engage the heavy weapons, he barked. Take down that dropship. With a wave of his hand, the human troops began shifting their position, calling in support. Drones buzzed overhead, launching thermite grenades that stuck to the Cthar assault ship, setting it ablaze in seconds. Meanwhile, Miles and a team of Black Fangs split from the main group, flanking the Cthar commander. The ground rumbled again as the dropship's turrets fired, but it was too late. The Cthar were already scrambling to defend their commander. Miles's squad was on them, cutting through the chaos like a blade through cloth. The Cthar commander roared, swinging a massive energy axe toward Miles, but the human captain sidestepped with a speed that belied his size. He drove his combat knife into the Cthar's side with a quick, brutal motion. The fight didn't last long. As the last of the Cthar forces fell, Miles stood, his chest heaving but his posture unwavering. He surveyed the battlefield, a field littered with alien bodies, smoke rising from scorched earth, the cries of the dying drifting away in the wind. Lyra approached cautiously, her eyes wide with disbelief. You won. Again. Miles gave a short nod. We did. And we'll keep winning. For as long as it takes. The Volari were no longer pacifists. They had been forced to confront the monster lurking at the edges of their peaceful world. And they were learning quickly that humanity had the strength to face it head-on. Would you like to continue with Section 4? The Reckoning? Certainly. Here's Section 4, The Reckoning, with a minimum of 700 words, concluding the story. Hashtag Section 4, The Reckoning. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the battlefield as the last of the Cathar invaders were hunted down. The once vibrant forest of Velar Prime had turned into a war-torn landscape. Smoldering wreckage from the Cathar ships dotted the ground, and broken bodies, both alien and human, lay scattered across the terrain. But there was no time for reflection, no moment to mourn. The war had not ended yet. Not until the last Cathar was driven from this world. Captain Elias Miles stood at the edge of the smoldering ruins of what had once been a Volari city. His visor retracted, revealing his scarred face as he surveyed the damage with cold precision. The Black Fangs had made quick work of the Cathar's assault force, but Miles knew this was only the beginning. The Volari had been targeted for annihilation, and their enemies were not going to stop until they had been wiped out entirely. The Volari had learned, though, that humanity's strength wasn't just in their weapons, their fearlessness, or their ruthlessness. It was in their adaptability. And now, after a few short hours of battle, the Volari were beginning to understand how deadly that adaptability could be. The Deathworlders were teaching them the most brutal lesson of all: how to survive. Lyra, the leader of the Volari, stood by Miles, her ethereal figure flickering faintly in the dimming light. Her silver eyes were dark with the weight of the destruction they had witnessed, but there was a new fire behind them, an awareness, a shift in understanding. The fear she had once felt for humanity had transformed into respect, even a reluctant admiration. You've shown us power like we've never seen, she said softly, her voice touched with awe. But we're not like you. We cannot fight as you do. Miles turned to her, his expression unreadable. You don't have to fight the way we do. But you need to fight. Because if you don't, the Cathar will finish what they started. And next time, we may not be here to help you. The ground trembled underfoot, and Miles glanced up to see the massive Cathar warship still floating in the sky above them. The giant ship had been crippled in the earlier skirmishes, but its presence still lingered like a dark cloud, ominous and suffocating. The Cathar weren't done yet, and neither were the humans. Miles tapped his wrist. Calm, squad. Prepare to move. We've got company incoming. The sound of engines roared from above as reinforcements arrived. Cathar transport ships, larger than the ones they had fought earlier, descended from the sky, their shadows growing larger as they approached the landing zone. This time, the Cathar weren't coming for a quick raid. They were bringing in everything they had left. Get to cover, Miles ordered, his voice as cold as ever. We're not giving them another inch. The humans dispersed quickly, setting up defensive positions and preparing their weapons. The Volari watched in silence, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. They had never seen warriors move with such precision, such ferocity. Miles had led them through the first battle with ease, but now, with the Cathar bringing reinforcements, the real test had begun. Miles and his Black Fangs were already in position when the Cathar ships landed with a thunderous crash. The moment the hatches opened, dozens of Cathar soldiers poured out, armored and heavily armed, their weapons crackling with lethal energy. This wasn't a skirmish anymore. This was war, the kind that only Deathworlders knew how to wage. The first wave of Cathar soldiers fell before they even had a chance to react. Pulse rifles and energy cannons lit up the sky, turning the darkened atmosphere into a spectacle of light and fire. The humans fought like demons unleashed, pushing forward relentlessly, breaking the Cathar lines with each step. Miles moved with them, his blade flashing as he tore through the Cathar ranks. Each swing of his weapon was precise, a calculated dance of death. The Black Fangs followed him, ruthless and efficient, covering each other's backs, ensuring no Cthar was left standing. They fought as a unit, a perfect machine of destruction. Lyra watched the humans in action, her heart heavy with realization. She had seen them fight, brutal, unrelenting, and fearless, but she also saw something else. A strange, unspoken bond between them. These were not just soldiers fighting for survival. These were warriors who fought for each other. And the thought struck her. Could her people ever become like this? As the last of the Cthar soldiers fell, Miles didn't celebrate. He didn't take a moment to revel in victory. There was only the next step, the next battle, the next challenge. The humans had been tested, and they had emerged victorious. But the war was far from over. Lyra approached him, her silver eyes filled with a question. What happens now? We don't stop until the Cthar are gone, Miles replied flatly. We wipe them out, and we make sure they never come back. That's the only way to guarantee your survival. And ours. But we cannot fight like you, Lyra said, her voice faltering. We cannot carry this burden. Miles turned to her, his expression softening for the briefest moment. You don't have to. We'll fight with you. But you have to fight too. You have to learn. The Cthar aren't going to stop. They'll never stop. Not unless you stand with us. Lyra's gaze hardened, and for the first time, she held Miles' stare, not with fear or hesitation, but with a growing sense of resolve. She had seen what the humans could do, and now, she could see a future where the Volari stood beside them. We will learn, she said, her voice firm. We will fight. Miles nodded.
Good.
Then let's finish this. The war against the Cthar was not just about survival. It was about something deeper. It was about the choice to fight, the choice to stand up against an enemy that would crush everything you held dear. And for the first time, the Volari understood what that meant. They were no longer just a peaceful race hoping for salvation. They were warriors in their own right, ready to do whatever it took to protect their people. The sky above Velar Prime was filled with the sounds of battle, but it was also filled with something else. Hope. A hope born from the unlikeliest of sources. A hope forged in the fires of war, tempered by the blood of those who had chosen to fight. And as the final Cthar forces retreated into the atmosphere, the Volari knew that they were no longer alone in the galaxy. They had Deathworlders by their side. And together, they would reshape their future. This concludes the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Would you like any edits or further developments?